The courtroom was suffocating, every breath thick with dread, as the echo of the judge's gavel thundered like a final nail in a coffin. Emily clutched the edge of her seat, her fingers trembling though her eyes refused to fall. Thomas lowered his head, his jaw clenched as if to hold back a flood of words that could change nothing. Anna reached across the wooden bench, whispering, "We will find a way," though her voice cracked under the weight of doubt. Beside them, Michael tapped his foot relentlessly, his defiance boiling beneath the surface. Across the room, Harold sat composed, his gaze cold and unyielding, the faintest trace of satisfaction curling at his lips. Outside, the world raged on, but inside, the family's name was being ground into dust. The verdict was not only a sentence but a scar that would mark them all forever. The courthouse doors slammed open, and the family stumbled into the cold evening air, their faces pale against the fading sun. Emily whispered, "It feels like the walls followed us out," her voice trembling under the weight of unseen chains. Thomas walked beside her, silent, his jaw rigid, every step heavy like stone grinding against stone. Anna wrapped her arms around Michael, whispering comfort that dissolved in the biting wind. Michael muttered, "They wanted us broken. I won't let them have it." His eyes burned with defiance, though fear lingered behind his gaze. The city moved around them, strangers brushing past, indifferent to their suffering. Above, the courthouse towered like a vengeful monument, casting long shadows across their path. It was not only the trial that had marked them but the system itself, and in that moment the family realized their fight was just beginning. The family walked down cracked stone steps, each echo sharp against the silence of their shame. Reporters swarmed, flashes bursting like relentless lightning. "How does it feel to lose everything?" a voice shouted. Emily shielded her eyes, whispering to herself, "Don't let them see me break." Thomas shoved past, his broad shoulders blocking the cameras, growling, "Enough!" Anna pulled Michael closer, her arm tightening like a shield, her smile forced as though protecting him from the world's cruelty. Michael snapped, "Ask the ones who lied, not us," his voice raw with fury. The reporters only leaned closer, sniffing for blood, and the courthouse steps became a battlefield of questions that cut deeper than any verdict. The family moved together, battered but not broken, their silence louder than words. In the parking lot, the family reached their car, its faded paint reflecting the last light of dusk. Emily stood still, staring at the vehicle as though it carried every mile of their suffering. Thomas said, "We can't stay here. They'll circle like vultures." Anna gently touched his arm, her voice low. "Well, drive, but where do we go when the world believes their lies?" Michael leaned against the car, fists clenched, muttering, "They think we're weak. We'll prove them wrong." Emily exhaled shakily, pulling the door open, whispering, "Then we fight." Her words carried no bravado, only a fragile determination that settled into the group like steel under fire. Around them, the parking lot stood empty, vast and echoing, a reminder of how abandoned they truly were. The car engine sputtered to life, headlights slicing through the darkening lot. Emily stared at the road ahead, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "If we keep moving, maybe we'll stay alive," she murmured. Thomas sat beside her, his silence heavier than words, while Anna sat in back, her arm wrapped protectively around Michael. Michael whispered, "I don't care how strong they are. We're stronger together." Anna kissed the top of his head, eyes glistening in the glow of passing lights. The city stretched before them, a maze of danger and possibility, each street hiding shadows, each corner whispering betrayal. Yet within the car, their breath aligned, their broken hearts beating as one. The verdict had taken their name but not their fight. The car rolled into the narrow driveway of their small house, headlights cutting across peeling paint and unkempt grass. Emily gripped the steering wheel tighter, whispering, "Home doesn't feel like home anymore." Thomas stepped out first, his shoes crunching gravel, scanning the shadows as though expecting enemies to emerge from the darkness. Anna touched Michael's shoulder softly, her voice low, "We'll be safe inside for tonight." Michael glared at the darkened windows, muttering, "Safe doesn't exist anymore." The house seemed smaller now, walls bending under invisible pressure, its silence louder than the courthouse. The family walked toward the front door, each step a reminder that even the simplest act, crossing their own threshold, carried the weight of suspicion, fear, and the ache of betrayal that would not let go. Inside, the house felt colder than the night air, as if the verdict had seeped into its walls. Emily sat on the couch, her eyes fixed on the blank television screen, whispering, "They've taken our name, but not our spirit." Thomas paced near the window, peering through thin curtains, muttering, "They'll come again, reporters or worse." Anna busied herself in the kitchen, clattering dishes to drown the silence, her forced smile wavering whenever she turned back to them. Michael stood in the hallway, fists tight at his sides, whispering, "If they think we'll bow, they're wrong." The air was heavy, every tick of the clock pressing against them, binding them closer yet pulling at the cracks that threatened to split them apart. This was not rest, it was waiting for the next blow. The night stretched long, filled with restless movements and whispered doubts. Emily unfolded a letter from the court, her hands shaking as her voice cracked. "Every word here feels like a wound carved deeper." Thomas placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, saying, "We'll appeal, we'll fight, we won't be erased." Anna knelt beside Michael, brushing his hair back as he whispered, "They think I'm weak, but I'll show them." Her forced smile faltered, a shadow of fear crossing her eyes. The house creaked under the weight of their silence, every sound amplified into something threatening. Hope flickered dimly between them, fragile but alive, like a candle trembling in a storm. For a moment, it was not the world outside that threatened them, but the memories and doubts clawing within. The silence shattered when the phone rang, shrill and jarring against the quiet. Emily flinched, her heart hammering as Thomas grabbed the receiver. A voice hissed through the line, "Stop digging, or you'll lose more than your name." Thomas's grip tightened, his voice low. "We don't scare easily." The line went dead, leaving only the hollow tone echoing in the room. Michael clenched his fists, shouting, "They think they can scare us into silence." Anna pulled him close, her voice trembling. "They already know too much." Emily whispered, "They won't stop until we stop them." The family stood frozen, united by fear yet bound by fire. The call was more than a threat. It was a declaration of war, and their lives were no longer their own. Later, the family gathered around the kitchen table, the glow of a single bulb hanging above them. Emily spread out old files, whispering, "If we find what they buried, we can clear this." Thomas leaned forward, determination sharpening his features, saying, "Then we start tonight." Anna's hands shook as she traced a finger along faded documents, murmuring, "This road will cost us everything." Michael's eyes lit with fierce defiance. "Then let it cost. I'd rather burn than bow." The papers fluttered under the draft from a cracked window, fragile as the hope they carried. In that moment, the family shifted from survivors into warriors, their grief twisted into purpose. They no longer spoke as victims, but as fighters standing at the edge of war. The morning sun cut through grim clouds as Emily spread papers across the table, whispering, "Every path we take they block." Thomas leaned close, muttering, "That means we're close to something." Anna glanced nervously at the door, saying, "The closer we get, the more dangerous this becomes." Michael slammed his fist down, then let them come. Their fragile kitchen became a war room, papers transforming into battle lines. Shadows from the blinds striped their faces, like bars of a cage they refused to accept. The fight was no longer about defense. It was about striking back. Even as fear hovered, resolve thickened like armor. They were no longer waiting to be saved. They were preparing to fight. That afternoon, Emily met a contact in a deserted park, the benches wet from rain. A hooded figure slipped her a folder, whispering, "Not all truths survive the light." She asked, "Why help me?" His reply was sharp, "Because what buried you will bury me too." Thomas watched from a distance, jaw tight, eyes scanning for threats. Anna sat in the car nearby, hands gripping the wheel, whispering, "Come back quickly." Michael sketched the scene in his notebook, muttering, "Well, need proof." The folder weighed heavy in Emily's arms, not with paper but with fire. For the first time the system had cracked, and through it bled a chance. Back home, the folder spilled secrets across the table, documents stamped confidential, names circled in red. Emily whispered, "This is what they hid." Thomas replied, "Enough to burn them." Anna's hand trembled over one name, murmuring, "I knew them. They sat at our table." Michael snapped, "Then they'll answer for it." The walls seemed to close in as the air grew heavier. Every paper was a blade, every secret a cut. What had begun as whispers now roared as undeniable proof. Fear didn't vanish, but it transformed, sharpened into resolve. Their fight was no longer blind. It was aimed. That night, the house shuddered with the sound of glass breaking. Emily gasped, whispering, "They know." Thomas grabbed a flashlight, saying, "Stay behind me." Anna pulled Michael close, whispering, "Don't move." Shadows shifted across the walls as footsteps echoed outside. Michael hissed, "They won't scare me." The intruders didn't enter. Their message was the shattered window, shards glittering like warnings on the floor. Emily whispered, "They're reminding us they're watching." Thomas's jaw tightened, then let them see us fight. The house felt fragile, but the family's will hardened. Fear had come to their door, and they refused to bow. The family gathered again at the table, broken glass still crunching beneath their shoes. Emily whispered, "They want us silent." Thomas said firmly, "Then we'll speak louder." Anna's voice cracked, "What if the truth costs us everything?" Michael glared, fire in his eyes, "Then it's worth it." Papers scattered before them became their shield and weapon. The night pressed in, heavy with danger, but their unity burned brighter. The fight was no longer about clearing their name. It was about tearing the mask from a system that thrived on silence. Their survival now meant war, and they were ready. The family gathered in the dim kitchen, silence pressing like a storm before it breaks. Emily unfolded a hidden envelope slipped under their door, her voice quivering as she read aloud. "The truth lies closer than you think." Thomas leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Someone inside knows more than they admit. Anna clutched the edge of the table, whispering, "What if it's someone we trusted?" Michael slammed his hand down, anger flashing. "Then they'll answer for it." The letter burned in Emily's hand, the words written with a cruelty that felt intimate. For the first time, suspicion turned inward, clawing at their fragile unity. The shadows seemed thicker, every corner alive with betrayal. What had once been a fight against strangers now pointed back to those who had stood closest, and the air was poisoned with doubt. Later that night, the family searched through old boxes stacked in the basement. Dust rose with each opened lid, carrying fragments of their past. Emily whispered, "These papers don't belong here." Thomas lifted a file, his voice sharp. "This was sealed years ago." Anna stepped back, her face pale. Who would keep this hidden? Michael pulled out a photograph, muttering, "This changes everything." The photo showed a familiar face standing beside Harold, their supposed enemy. Emily's breath caught. "It's not just them, it's us." The truth was no longer a distant threat, but a wound inside their own walls. The basement felt like a tomb, filled not with forgotten objects but with buried betrayals. Every box opened, deepened the fracture, and the past clawed its way back into the present. The photograph lay between them on the table, a silent weapon cutting deeper than any threat. Emily whispered, "It's someone we loved, someone who betrayed us." Thomas's voice hardened. "I knew the cracks were inside, but I didn't want to believe." Anna covered her mouth, tears spilling. "All this time, and we never saw it." Michael's glare burned into the image. "They chose them over us." The revelation tore at every memory, reshaping trust into poison. The room seemed to tilt, walls pressing closer, as if the house itself recoiled from the truth. No enemy outside could wound them as this did. Betrayal from within was the cruelest blade. Their fight was no longer only against the system, but against ghosts of loyalty shattered. The silence broke when the door creaked open, and footsteps echoed in the hallway. Emily froze, clutching the photo tight. Thomas whispered, "Someone's here." Anna grabbed Michael's arm, pulling him closer. A shadow stretched across the floor as Harold stepped into view, calm as ever, his voice chilling. Truth is heavier than justice, and you've carried it blind. Emily's voice shook. You knew all along. Harold smiled faintly. I shaped it. The family's fear turned to fury, their eyes burning with realization that the web had always been closer than they imagined. The house seemed to darken with his presence. The lines between friend and foe twisted into something unrecognizable. Betrayals stood not outside their door, but within it. The confrontation ignited like fire in dry grass. Emily stepped forward, trembling but unbroken. You twisted our lives. Harold's gaze sharpened. I only revealed who you are. Thomas's fists clenched, his voice steady. No more lies, not here. Anna's tears hardened into steel, whispering, You don't own our truth. Michael's defiance cut through the tension. We'll destroy you. Harold's calm never wavered, his smirk cruel, as though he had already won. The air thickened, every second stretching like a blade. For the first time, the family no longer looked like victims. They stood as a storm gathering, fractured yet fierce, bound by betrayal, but ready to strike. The twist was no longer a secret. It was war. The courthouse buzzed with anticipation as the trial resumed, every seat filled with restless eyes. Emily sat rigid at the front, whispering to herself, This is where we take it back. Thomas placed a hand on her arm, steadying her trembling resolve. Anna leaned close, murmuring, They can break the walls, but not the truth. Michael glared at the jury box, muttering, They'll hear us, even if they refuse to listen. Harold entered calmly, his polished shoes echoing like a declaration of dominance, his smirk untouched by doubt. The judge's gavel called order, but the silence that followed was heavier than noise. The air carried the weight of everything they had endured, and this moment was no longer about one family. It was about defiance against the machine that tried to erase them. The prosecutor laid out files like weapons, his voice booming, This family built lies. Emily clenched her fists, whispering, We built survival. Thomas stood, demanding, Where is the evidence you claim exists? The prosecutor smirked, replying, It vanished, as truth often does when guilt hides it. Anna's face paled, but she whispered, Don't let them bury us again. Michael muttered, They want silence, but we'll give them fire. Every eye turned as Emily rose, her voice unshaking despite the tremor beneath. You judged us guilty before we spoke. Today we speak. The room tilted toward chaos, the gavel pounding, but no sound could suppress the storm breaking free. A witness stepped forward, his eyes darting with guilt, hands shaking as he swore the oath. Emily leaned forward, whispering, He knows. Thomas muttered, Watch his cracks. The prosecutor pressed hard, Tell the court what they hid. The witness hesitated, voice breaking. I was told to lie. Gasps filled the room. Anna's hand flew to her mouth, tears threatening. He's unraveling. Michael whispered fiercely, Finally, someone sees. Harold shifted in his seat, eyes narrowing like a predator sensing control slip. The judge banged the gavel, demanding order, but the courtroom had already erupted into whispers, the foundation of the accusation shaking under the weight of truth, clawing its way free. The judge demanded silence, but the air pulsed with chaos. Emily stood, her voice clear, We never asked for pity, we asked for truth. Thomas added, Every piece of evidence vanished, because those in power feared it. Anna whispered to herself, Don't let this slip away. Michael's defiance cut like a blade. You wanted us erased. We're louder now. Harold rose, his calm veneer cracking as he spat. This is not justice, it's theater. Emily faced him steady, then let the truth perform. The gavel slammed, but the family's words had already ignited sparks. The climax was not in silence, but in voices refusing to bend. The gavel's echo was drowned by voices rising. Emily's tears glistened, but her tone was steel. We are not victims, we are survivors. Thomas lifted the scattered files, declaring, You cannot erase what's written in blood. Anna's whisper was steady, They may twist, but they cannot end us. Michael shouted, We are stronger than your lies. Harold stood motionless, Smirk gone. Silence his last defense. The courtroom roared as the weight shifted, the power no longer his. The family once broken stood unbowed at the center, their truth blazing brighter than judgment. The climax was not the verdict yet to come, but the fire they lit that no hand could extinguish. The verdict was delayed, yet the silence in the courtroom felt heavier than a sentence. Emily whispered, "We gave them the truth. What they do with it is theirs." Thomas stood tall beside her, murmuring, "We've already won something. We broke their silence." Anna squeezed Michael's hand under the table, whispering, "Whatever comes, we stand together." Michael glared at Harold across the aisle, muttering, "He looks smaller now." Harold smirked faintly, but his eyes betrayed cracks in his confidence. The family had entered shattered, but they now radiated defiance that could not be stripped by ink or gavel. The system still held its cards, but for the first time, the family held themselves. The family walked out into the gray daylight, the courthouse looming behind them like a monument of scars. Emily said quietly, "The truth is no longer hidden." Thomas replied, "Justice doesn't need permission to exist." Anna wrapped her coat tighter, whispering, "We've already paid more than enough." Michael muttered, "They thought the fight ended here. It doesn't." The steps they descended carried a weight greater than stone. Each echo was a defiance against betrayal. Reporters pressed forward, shouting questions, but their voices barely pierced the resolve that cloaked the family. They were no longer running from fear, but walking into it. At home, the house felt different, less like a cage, more like a battlefield, scarred but standing. Emily sat at the table, staring at scattered papers, whispering, "We survived their verdict." Thomas placed his hand on the pile, saying, "And we'll rebuild from here." Anna brought cups of untouched tea, her voice steady. "They tried to break us, but we're still whole." Michael leaned back, fire in his voice, "Let them watch us rise." The walls no longer echoed with dread but with quiet strength, as though the house itself had absorbed their endurance. It was not freedom, not yet, but it was survival carved into something stronger than fear. The evening came heavy with silence, broken only by the hum of distant traffic. Emily walked to the window, whispering, "The world still doubts us." Thomas joined her, his voice firm, "Doubt isn't defeat." Anna sat on the couch, her head lowered. "They will talk, but they don't decide who we are." Michael leaned against the wall, muttering, "They can hate us. I don't care." Outside, the streetlight flickered, throwing long shadows that seemed to dance with unease. Yet inside, the family stood in their silence, not as victims, but as survivors of a war still unfinished. The world's judgment loomed, but their resolve loomed larger. The family gathered around the kitchen table once more, the same table where fear had once consumed them. Emily whispered, "We'll never be the same, but maybe stronger." Thomas nodded, his voice calm. "We've carried the worst. Now we carry each other." Anna touched Michael's shoulder, smiling faintly. "You've grown fiercer than any of us." Michael's voice cracked but steady. "Because I had to." The papers scattered before them were no longer symbols of loss, but reminders of survival. The storm outside was not over, but within their walls, the fire of endurance burned bright. Resolution did not mean peace, but it meant they still stood, and they would keep standing. Night hung heavy over the city, rain streaking the windows in silver trails. Emily whispered, "After everything, the silence feels louder." Thomas leaned against the wall, murmuring, "Silence is where truth lingers longest." Anna placed her hand over Michael's, whispering, "We may not be free, but we are unbroken." Michael's eyes gleamed, muttering, "They'll remember us, not their lies." The house creaked as though listening, each corner echoing with ghosts of betrayal and survival. Beyond the storm, the city pulsed indifferent, yet inside, the family carried a fire that no verdict could extinguish. Their story would not end in a courtroom. It would end in the shadows of memory, where silence itself carried their rebellion. The phone rang again, sharp and sudden, shattering the fragile calm. Emily froze, whispering, "Another threat?" Thomas answered, voice steady, "Or another truth?" The line crackled with silence before a distorted voice murmured, "You've opened doors that can't be closed." Anna's face paled as she whispered, "They're still watching." Michael shouted, "Let them watch." The call ended abruptly, leaving only the echo of static. The family exchanged glances, not fear, but acceptance. What they had stirred would never fully settle. The system was too vast, the lies too deep. Yet, in that moment, they were no longer bound to fear. The call was not an end, but a reminder. Their fight echoed beyond their walls. Later, Emily sat alone at the kitchen table, the sealed letter before her, untouched for years. She whispered, "It's time." Her fingers trembled as she tore it open, eyes scanning the faded words. Thomas entered quietly, whispering, "What does it say?" Tears welled as Emily whispered, that we were never meant to survive, but we did. Anna appeared in the doorway, whispering, "And now we live beyond their design." Michael leaned in, fierce, "Then we've already won." The letter was not freedom, but it was proof that survival itself was rebellion. The weight of years lifted, replaced with the sharp edge of resolve. The past no longer held them hostage, it armed them. The family stepped outside into the storm, rain soaking their clothes, as thunder rolled above. Emily whispered, "Every storm ends, but not every scar fades." Thomas placed his arm around her shoulders, saying, "Scars remind us we're still here." Anna took Michael's hand, whispering, "We'll keep walking, no matter how dark." Michael's defiance burned even in the rain, muttering, "They will never erase us." The street stretched endless, pools of water reflecting the glow of streetlights. They walked together into the night, their footsteps a rhythm louder than the storm. Resolution was not victory, but endurance, carved in each step forward. The storm softened to drizzle, leaving the street glistening under pale light. Emily stopped, whispering, "We may never see justice, but we've seen truth." Thomas nodded, saying, "Truth is heavier than judgment." Anna murmured, "And truth is what will outlast them." Michael's voice rose, fierce and unyielding. "They'll remember us when the system forgets itself." The family stood together, soaked but unbroken, the city vast and indifferent around them. Their battle was unfinished, their scars permanent, but their defiance eternal. The final silence fell, not as surrender, but as a haunting echo. The truth, once revealed, cannot be buried again.